and welcome to another episode of Earth911 Sustainability in Your Ear. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe, I'm your host, and we are back to have another fascinating conversation with an innovator in the sustainability space. Before we get started, I want to call back to a recent show featuring EPAM's Dan Smythe. And in that conversation, he shared that 39% of the respondents to their Consumers Unpacked survey, and those are people in the United States, UK, and Germany, said that they are planning to buy used items to reduce their environmental impact in the next year. We think that signals a shift that is underway as people look to lower the impact on the planet of their shopping habits. Buying used is one of the most effective ways to reduce your environmental footprint because nothing new needs to be manufactured. Of course, getting reliable used products shipped to you can be challenging, and long shipping routes can add to the product's carbon footprint. That's where online marketplaces like eBay come in. They can help connect local buyers and sellers efficiently or provide tools such as adding carbon offsets to transactions to reduce the impact of long-distance shipping. The journey towards sustainability is just getting underway, and we're pleased to welcome eBay's Chief Sustainability Officer, Renee Morin, who is here to discuss the e-commerce giant's plans to make the marketplace more sustainable and findings of a recent survey about re-commerce, that is, buying used, that eBay conducted. They found a rising tide of sustainability priorities among their shoppers. 80% of Gen Z respondents reported buying used in the last year, and sustainability is becoming a driver of eBay purchases and selling. 26% of women, 15% of men, and 23% of millennials, who are both men and women, by the way, say that environmental responsibility is their primary reason for selling on eBay. And 94% of those sustainability-minded respondents say they buy and sell used specifically to reduce the amount of waste they produce. You can find out about eBay, if you don't already know, at ebay.com. Renee, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Mitch.
Well, thanks for joining us. The Recommerce report's really interesting because you found a lot of intriguing trends, and I kind of want to start with walking through those. So the first was that there's a clear trend among younger generations towards buying more. How do you see the embrace of sustainable thinking playing out across generations in the findings that you reported?
That's a great question, and definitely one of the findings that we have in the report speaks directly to sustainability. The primary driver is still economics, right? So being able to save a little bit of money, being able to sell online and make some money definitely plays into the overall story of the circular economy. But more specifically, what we're seeing are the younger generations are more value driven. And that goes, through climate change, politics, et cetera. What they can do online then is actually shop with those values in mind. And if they want to buy used, we're a great place to do that.
So where do they attribute those values? Do they attribute them to the sellers on eBay, or do they think of eBay as representing those values and as a place to shop to exercise their concerns about the environment?
Well, we hope both, honestly. They can choose specific sellers that may speak to their own values. They can buy used, which speaks to their values potentially. They can also sell online. But eBay is also trying to take care of our own footprint as well. Mm-hmm. We have some ambitious goals around climate change and renewable energy, so to make sure that we're operating efficiently as a business while we're on the platform, we have the ability to have sellers of any demographic, any ethnicity come online and sell or buy our goods.
Well, it's interesting, too, that the sellers that you have surveyed reported that they believe it's getting more common to buy used and that it's easier to sell used goods than it used to be. And I think that's partly due to the fact that eBay has been around for more than 25 years now, and we are really used to the idea of going online. I've bought and sold a lot of stuff on eBay. Has the technical environment that we've created, the world of the internet, reoriented people's relationships to what they buy, partly because they no longer have to go to the store to do it, where everything is new, and simply, it's just a matter of used has emerged as a much more convenient option. To your earlier comment about it has to be affordable, a good value, and convenient.
Yeah, I think, when you go online, everything's at your fingertips, right? And at eBay, you can buy just about anything you're looking for is going to be on our site because our sellers are so diverse. The goods that we have online are so diverse. And pretty much every category, there's an option to select used or refurbished. And I think, that ease of purchasing has really helped to drive more people to be comfortable with buying used. We also have a couple of programs that speak to authenticity guarantees. So what you're getting is what you're getting. And there's always your ability to have a money back guarantee as well on some of our products. So I think there's a trust factor there that we've been building over the past 25 years that also helps people feel more comfortable with the process of buying used.
Well, that trust factor, I think, is really critical. And right now you have about a 50% authenticated product or level on the site. What can eBay do to help certify that products are authentic, as well as potentially communicate more information about the environmental impacts of those products? The way, for instance, that Patagonia does, where you can interrogate a product you're about to buy to see what its carbon footprint, water footprint, and social impact is. Have you thought about using more information about the products and where they came from in the first place to enable a more confident buying decision?
Yeah, we definitely are thinking about that. We have a goal that's being refreshed right now, actually, that measures the amount of carbon being avoided by purchasing used and refurbished online. It's a large goal in the sense that it covers multiple categories of goods, but we also have the ability to drill down and are looking at ways that we can associate some of that information more directly with products and not just at a macro level, which we're looking at now. We're hoping to help avoid over 7 million metric tons of carbon from 2021 to 2025 through selling used and refurbished goods online.
Now, you a moment ago, you mentioned economic opportunity, and obviously one of the most important elements of the transition to a sustainable economy will be bringing everybody along with real opportunities. eBay and other online marketplaces are very effective points of entry for low-income, people of color, underrepresented communities of all sorts to start to establish a presence in the marketplace.
Sure.
How does eBay work to increase their access?
I think, the internet itself is accessible, right? And so we have some programs. One is called Up and Running, which you put a link in there if you want. That program in particular was focused on helping new sellers who haven't been online before get comfortable with that whole process. And so we were giving in-kind contributions to their learning so that they could become more comfortable and sell online and really participate in an online experience that they might not have previously done. We've got some programs over in the United Kingdom, specifically looking at eBay for Change, where we're focused on socially minded sellers. So we're really trying to make it a level playing field for everyone. I've sold stuff online. You said you've sold stuff online, and I'm not a business of myself, but we all have that opportunity. And what's interesting sometimes, what happens is folks start to sell stuff online, realize how easy it is, and end up becoming a business. We've seen that happen with a few of our sellers, more than a few actually. Yeah.
But going back to the idea of shopping your values, should we expect at some point in the future where sellers, whether they're individuals or small businesses, are denoted by Black-owned business or woman-owned business or other things like that? Have you thought about helping people to express their values and identity in that way?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people have their own storefronts, right, online, and if that's something that they want to lean into, we're fully supportive of that. We're looking into ways to help accelerate that informational exchange, really. So yeah, keep your eyes open. We may have something down the road that looks very similar to allowing people to hashtag, right? It's like, how do I find the particular seller that speaks to my own values?
That's great to hear. I look forward to learning more when it happens. So let's talk about your environmental impact, as you mentioned a moment ago. You've reduced your scope 1 and 2 emissions between 2019 and 2020, which is the last data I saw, by 19%. That's a lot, especially considering what happened in 2020. I was also surprised that you used 5% less energy in 2020. It seems like that's when everybody was online. So what are the strategies that allowed you to actually reduce your emissions and achieve this lower energy use?
Right. And that goes back to speaking to us wanting to participate as a good corporate citizen, right? Like we're not just pushing our ambition to reduce emissions onto sellers and buyers. We want to make sure we're taking care of our own house. And so what we have also is 100% renewable energy goal by 2025. So a lot of our carbon emissions are from electricity. And what we have been able to do is to enter into what are called power purchase agreements. We have a wind farm in Texas that is actually up and running. We don't own it. And that's the beauty of what the market has been able to bring to corporations, is an ability to help invest in renewable energy, but you don't have to own the project itself. So that contributes to greening of the grid, which helps us reduce our overall corporate emissions as well. And then energy use, we were a little surprised too, to be honest, because there was so much traffic, right? There was such a boom in online sales. And so that is sort of a combination of us continually reviewing how efficient we can be in our own data centers, as well as a lot of folks weren't at the office. So there was a little bit of a dip there from people working from home.
Now, the lion's share of your total greenhouse gas emissions are scope 3. They account for 96% of the emissions associated with eBay. This is a really challenging area to measure all the stuff that's largely beyond your immediate control. Do you feel confident at this point that business is capable of capturing and sharing information about scope 3 emissions so that you can start to work to reduce them?
It's a work in progress. It's a journey for sure. I started doing carbon footprinting maybe 10 years ago, and just figuring out what scope 1 and 2 was a challenge, right? And so it's not so much about the information, because we go source that information for our scope 3 emissions ourselves. And by scope 3, for those of you out there who might not know, that's what's outside of our four walls, right? So upstream and downstream in our value chain. Things like delivery of our products, not our products, but the seller's products to the buyers, is a major contributor to our scope 3 emissions. Upstream stuff includes what we purchase to run our business, so CapEx, et cetera.
Would your scope 3 emissions also include the boxes that sellers use to ship, or is that even outside of?
Yeah, not under the protocol, right? So we do adhere to the GHG protocol, so that's not in our scope 3 boundary. But going back to the information question, we specifically on the transportation side are working with carriers directly to help make sure that we're getting the most accurate information around what their footprint looks like, right? So that we can then work with them to reduce those emissions, which are their scope 1 and 2. They become our scope 3.
Well, and that's really one of the challenges of this. Many companies consider that kind of information competitively sensitive, and so aren't completely transparent, to put it mildly. How can we encourage companies to be a lot more transparent about their scope 1 and 2 emissions so that scope 3 emissions are easier to project? Is that something that you have thought about?
We report to the CDP, which used to be called the Carbon Disclosure Project. Now it covers forestry and water, et cetera. So a lot of the Fortune 500 companies are already disclosing, right? And so that makes it easier for us to access information. I think there's definitely a trend towards transparency. The SEC, the Security Exchange Commission, has a ruling out right now that will require corporations who are publicly traded to put their climate emissions in their 10K filings, right? So the trend is out there, and I think it's more about how do we work together to reduce the emissions.
Well, those are aggregate numbers, though. Do you feel like we need to have, for instance, your ability to look into, let's just pick one of your shippers, FedEx, and how much their shipping operations as compared to the entire organization emit, so that you can map the number of times you use a truck and how far those trucks drive, because you know how far people ship stuff.
Right.
You have an amazing opportunity to scope that, but you would need very granular information. Is that kind of information becoming available?
It is actually, yeah,
Really?
and it's encouraging. So we started footprinting with our U.S. shipments specifically, and working with those primary carriers. This year, we've been working more closely with a couple other of our larger markets, because we need accurate data, just like you said, in order to show that we're reducing emissions,
Right.
right? If we're estimating everything, then we're never going to know if we're getting better or not. So we've been met with a lot of cooperation, honestly. So it's encouraging that we have access to this data. It's a combination of knowing what all is being shipped on our end, and then those companies, and also the U.S. Postal Service, having the handle on what their emissions are, so we can attribute it specifically to what's really being passed around on eBay.
Have you also been talking with your shipping partners about their use or adoption of electric delivery vehicles? And do you see progress happening there? I know that the Postal Service was just reorganized by an executive order this week. So there's real opportunity for them to migrate to EV trucks.
Mm-hmm.
But are you seeing that across the board?
Especially with, the other private carriers. They have their own goals: UPS, FedEx, DHL, etc. That's really what's going to change our footprint, right? In terms of transportation. It's not just an eBay issue, it's an e-commerce issue. So if we're going to get all of these goods to people's doorsteps, we need to start electrifying those fleets. And we also need to keep greening our grid, right? So the electricity that's being put into these vehicles is also green.
Right.
It's going to take some time for sure, but there's definitely activity in the space. And I think, just like with the way of renewable energy, we're hoping that there will be that progress where more products become available. 10, 15 years ago, it would be almost impossible for a corporation like eBay to invest in renewables at size. Now there are products out there that make it pretty simple, straightforward. We're hoping to see that same transition happen in transportation as well.
So I wanted to ask a couple of questions about how you've been thinking about helping buyers and sellers reduce their environmental impact. And I'm wondering if you've looked at matching buyers and sellers by their geography. In other words, finding the closest option and at least offering it as a preferred option compared to a long distance transaction.
There are some options to source locally, right? We can encourage that, but at the end of the day, it's a consumer's decision. So I think it's more of a cultural shift that we're going to have to see to want to have people be comfortable with not getting things overnight, right? To have people, and it's not an eBay thing. It's a, like I said, it's a cultural thing. So do we really need this immediately? Could I wait so it gets shipped by a truck and not by a plane? Can I buy more locally and think about that consciously? So that really comes back to the thought of thoughtful commerce, right? So when you're making these decisions as an individual, as a consumer, you've got a lot of different levers to pull. So what drives you? And I think hopefully we're heading that direction. It's encouraging to see the Gen Z, the demographic, grabbing on more to these value-driven decisions.
Yeah, and they are actually willing to pay more for it, which is the actual transition that we need to see happen, because everybody can express this, but actually doing it is sometimes more expensive, at least early on in the process. Now, another option would be to adding carbon offsets to, such as tree planting or carbon sequestration as part of a purchase. Have you considered offering the ability to plant trees to offset one's shipping impact?
Not trees specifically. We do actually have a pilot in Germany that's online. If you shop on the German website, that you can purchase offsets at checkout. So that's something that we're looking into potentially expanding, just giving consumers that choice of feeling better about their purchases.
What kind of offsets? I'm curious.
I'd have to go back and look. It's been a while since I've gone through. There's 3 different projects that I recall. One in Rwanda, but I don't have that at my fingertips. But they were carefully chosen projects, and they're available on the German website as well. That's transparent.
I will have to go and translate that page using Google Translate. The but you said, but not tree planting. I'm curious. Do you consider tree planting not an effective form of offset?
Oh, no, there's nothing wrong with planting trees for sure. I'm just saying that's not what we're offering right now.
Okay.
So it could happen. We just,
But
with any sort of afforestation or reforestation project, we just want to make sure that it's a project of value, that there aren't unintended consequences, which can happen on occasion. We just want to be, careful and thoughtful about what we're offering.
okay. Well, changing gears a little bit, I did read your CDP report, and I
Oh
was
boy.
really surprised that you mentioned extreme weather impacts disrupting your business. Is eBay seeing climate impacts in its revenue at this point? And are you able to assess regions based on what you're seeing that face long-term climate challenges?
Not to the level where it disrupts our revenue, right? Our revenue stream. There'll be blips that are associated with extreme weather events. Like if there was a hurricane that comes through a particular area, which is probably what you're referring to in the CDP
Yeah, it was
report.
Hurricane Dorian.
Yeah, and there's always going to be a hurricane, and people lose electricity and access to the internet, so and transportation, et cetera. So during that period of time, that we do see a slowdown in those regions. But there's always a rebound effect afterwards.
Yeah,
This is why we're part of the climate action, right? Is that we want to see a trend where we don't continue to have more and more of these extreme weather events. And same reason why we're setting science-based targets to reduce our own carbon footprint. So we're part of the solution, hopefully.
It certainly looks like it. I want to ask, finally, how do you feel eBay is doing in its journey towards sustainability? You haven't set a net zero goal across all your emissions. Is that the next step for you, to put a stake in the ground and then start to work towards that overall net zero goal?
Well, first of all, I think to answer your first question, I feel really good about where we are in terms of our sustainability journey. And it definitely is a journey, right? There's always a new activity that we need to address, or a new product that we can think about to continue to improve our own stake within the sustainability narrative. In terms of net zero, we're considering it for sure. Again, maybe this might be my own background, but we want to be thoughtful about how we set that target. They're difficult to achieve, right? And they're very long term.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure that if we're going to put a target out there for net zero, that it's tangible and feasible, right? And a lot of that, I think, is going to have to do with advancements in technology. So I definitely not going to say we're not going to set a net zero target. We're just still evaluating how we want to do it.
Well, and you earlier talked about the need for consumer education so that everybody understands what you've signed up for and the challenges you face, as well as the ways they can contribute. Are you working on ways of articulating the shared challenges you have with your customers, so that they start to think about, whether they're an individual or a small business, reducing their footprint as well along with you? Can eBay be a catalyst for that awareness, that culture that you described? The way I would describe it is moving from digital naivete to digital native. And we're 15 or 20 years from digital native because we just aren't there yet.
Right.
That's a very challenging journey to take alone. And a lot of brands tend to try to go it alone by saying, we've got it covered, don't worry about us. Can they be more collaborative perhaps, and change the dialogue that way?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we say over and over, when our sellers thrive, we thrive, right? So we're in lockstep with our sellers, and I will be speaking into a seller event next week where sustainability is something that we want to talk about. So I think there's going to be more and more opportunities for us to help sellers, buyers along that journey as well. I've been doing sustainability consulting and working within companies for 20 plus years. So this is something I'm very familiar with, but not everybody is, right? And so I think that is part of our responsibilities is to educate and to allow folks to make more informed decisions.
Well, Renee, this is really encouraging, and I'm really excited to see what you're going to do next. How can folks follow along on eBay's sustainability journey?
Well, most people go to ebay.com, right? We do have an eBay Inc. site where you can see more of our stories around what we're doing in terms of sustainability, what we're doing with our sellers. Our Ecommerce report, actually, that we started the conversation on, is on our eBay Inc. website. So we have an impact site as well within that really showcases our goals, our progress, where we're headed, and we release a report every year. We're working on it basically as I speak, and that one will be released again in May. So I'm happy to have everybody follow along.
Great. Well, I will include a link in the article that goes with the podcast so people can find it. Thank you very much for taking some time to talk with us today.
Oh, thank you. It's been a joy. Appreciate it.
We've been talking with Renee Morin. She is the Chief Sustainability Officer at eBay. And as she called out, you can find out more, particularly about their sustainability efforts at www.ebayinc. That's ebayinc.com. There's no space or dash in eBay Inc. ebayinc.com. A lot of good information about their sustainability efforts and the sentiment of people in the marketplace, the eBay marketplace, about their concerns with regard to sustainability. So check it out. We heard a lot about shipping and boxes during that conversation. And one of the most effective and simple ways for you to make a difference for the planet is to recycle those e-commerce cardboard boxes that pile up in our homes. Because the fibers in corrugated paper are so long, they are the most recyclable of almost all the materials and the most valuable of almost all the materials that come to our homes on a regular basis. Only metal is probably reliably more recyclable than corrugated paper or cardboard. So take a few minutes and recycle it. Put it into your blue bin if it's accepted there, or drop it at a drop-off location, and that is going to actually reduce your impact on the planet too. This is Earth911's Sustainability in Your Ear, and I'm Mitch Ratcliffe. We're going to be back with another innovator interview soon. In the meantime, I hope you take a few minutes to share this conversation and many of the others that we've shared with you on the show. With your friends and your family, the people that you work with. Let's all start thinking about more ideas so we can create less waste. We'll be back soon. In the meantime, take care of yourself, take care of one another, and let's all take care of this beautiful planet of ours. Have a green day.